So good evening, everybody. My name is Colleen Sauter, and I work here at the University of St. Thomas Opus College of Business. Really excited to have you here tonight for our second ever B4CG panel. So just to give our speakers a little bit of a sense, I'm loud. It's super hot. Just to give them a sense of who's in the room, how about if we do this? How many of you are first year, first semester freshmen? The vast majority. Okay. And then we have some students who are a little bit further in their term, right? How many of those have picked a major yet? All right. Why don't you shout out and give us a sense of some of the majors? Okay. What else? Marketing. Excellent. Okay, that's helpful for our panelists. So what I'd like to do is a couple of housekeeping topics. The first is there is a sign-in sheet, and if you haven't had a chance to sign in and you are one of the B4CG students, please make sure you get yourself signed in. Keep passing that through, and then your faculty member who's up here in front, she's gladly will take that at the end of the night to make sure that we're accountable for who's here tonight. All right? So with that, I would love to do introductions for our panelists. The majority are alumni here from St. Thomas, and some are what we call double Tommies, and that means they've gotten both an undergrad and a graduate degree from the institution. And I know you haven't picked a major yet, many of you, but maybe someday you'll come back and get an MBA, and we'd love that too. So with that, let's start with Liz here. And Liz, if you would talk a little bit about education and career path, a little bit about the organization that you're a part of, and then just touch to the current role you're in with regards to finance.
Great, sounds good. So I'm Liz Weber. I graduated from St. Thomas in 2004 with a major in economics and a minor in business. Starting off in my career, I went to Target actually, and I was there for about 12 years, so a large publicly traded company. Took a very kind of non-traditional path where I started down the merchandising route, became a buyer at some point where I ran about a $500 million business, and then said that I wanted to do enterprise-wide projects and starting to understand how to influence a total organization. So from that, I did some time in an HR role where we did mass changes to a lot of the ways that people were doing work. And then I moved back into a financial role where I got into data and analytics. And from that, I followed a leader over to another company, Super Value. So I got into another large publicly traded company where I worked in the wholesale business in their financial area, once again, really digging into data, financials, and starting to help them understand how their systems and financials tie together. And that led me to the current role that I'm in. I was telling some of my mentors that I wanted to get into private companies. Found an amazing opportunity at this company that I'm at right now. It's called WSB. It's a civil engineering firm that has been mostly engineers, and about a year and a half ago they brought in a CFO, and now he wanted to bring data and analytics to this company. So I'm there now as their Director of Financial Planning and Analysis, helping them go down this path of data and analytics to inform their strategic growth.
My name is Julie Singwald. I am a University of Minnesota graduate. I got my bachelor's degree in microbiology. My career path was to brew beer because I grew up in Colorado. I will tell you it's only been a personal, it's better? Awesome, okay. The beer brewing has only been on a personal level because there wasn't a lot of that here in Minnesota. So I had taken a job with Allina Health as a lab assistant and fell in love with the clinical aspect of the work. I went back and got clinically certified and worked 8 years in the microbiology lab, and then started to dabble a little bit into leadership. I ended up going through a progression of supervising a phlebotomy team, a hospital laboratory. I ended with a West Regional Laboratory Director position where I had 6 sites that I was overseeing in all aspects of that clinical laboratory. I took a big leap of faith and an operational leap into a different technical area and became the director of radiology services a couple of years ago, and overseeing the largest imaging department and West Region technical support for Allina Health. It was an interesting career path because my education also was a little delayed initially because I did a non-traditional take to my undergraduate because I was also in the Air National Guard, and so it took me a while to complete that undergraduate degree. I will tell you that the St. Thomas program that I did just graduate from in May was an awesome program, cohort, to complete my MBA. It's a challenge to get your MBA and work full-time, so when you have opportunities to get some of those things in early before kids and life happens, not a bad thing, but I will also say that when life happens, you can still do it. As far as my oversight and financial aspects of it, a big component of operations is really working with our financial partners, but we are managing essentially expense management of people and equipment, supplies, but I do a lot of contracting with physician groups, equipment purchases, and we're really looking as healthcare is changing is how do we go from a click for service or fee for an individual click to really whole person delivery of care, and really making sure that healthcare does not continue on the track that it is in expenditures, and how do we manage expenses and get paid for the service that we're provided in a way that is a little different than what a typical, here's your widget and you get paid for it opportunity. So lots of changes in that aspect.
Hi everyone, my name is Julia Peel. I'm a double Tommy, so I graduated in 2014 with an accounting degree, and then I finished my master in accounting 1 year later in 2015. I currently work at PwC, which is a Big Four accounting firm in Minneapolis. I spent the first 3 years of my career working and doing financial statement audits for private companies, mostly in the Twin Cities area, but a few out of state as well. And then I transferred into a different group, so I currently work in our IT audit group, and I do a few things in that group. I support our core audit teams by testing IT controls, and I also have the opportunity to be a consultant for a lot of the big Fortune 500 companies in the area. And so with that, I help them determine their key controls, looking at enterprise risk management, and implementing new controls at the company. So.
All right, hello, good night. Hello, we'll leave it at that. My name is Hannah Peterson. I am with Fairview Health Services. I'm a director in their Human Resources Department. In particular, it's called Organizational Development and Learning, and it's where we help our current employees continue to grow and develop in their careers and their professional skills and their soft skills. My path, I actually went to University of Wisconsin-Madison for my undergrad. I got a degree in psychology and kind of minored in business. And then actually moved out to California for a year and lived the nice, good life on the beach for a couple of months. And got a job at Geico doing claim work. So you got in a car accident, you'd call us, and I would sit there and kind of key in the information and look at police reports to determine who was at fault. And when I think back to like big job, career, starting the career, it was so interesting because I didn't realize it at the time, but that's where I just learned how to use a computer, which sounds ridiculous, but like interfacing with technology, interfacing with people on the phone, having to make these kind of calls that I never would have expected to be doing. And that actually kind of leapt me into human resources when I came back to the Twin Cities in terms of getting into benefits and being in a call center from a benefits perspective. And so once I had that experience, and once I kind of got in the door of HR, then I started taking on some different roles from a human resources perspective. So most of them have been in training and development, and again, that organizational development, but I have done some benefits work, and I have done some organizational change management. So I think Liz kind of mentioned that when organizations go through really big changes, how do we make sure the employees are kind of
able to make the change that the organization needs them to make, and what does that look like. So I've done some work there. I also most recently did some continuous improvement work with or Lean or Six Sigma, and that has really been helpful in the Fairview system as we're going to, as we're in the process of introducing continuous improvement to how we provide medical care to the community and our patients. And so within that space and within organizational development, my current role, it's really about how do we operationalize and how do we make sure our programs are the most effective. So when a nurse or a doctor or someone comes in through our programming, they're getting the most value out of it that they can in turn go and apply back to the patient-facing care. So, and I got my master's from St. Thomas kind of in the middle of all that. So I had probably 5 or 6 years of work experience under my belt before I came back to school.
Thank you.
Right. My name is Brian Simmons. I work for Newport Trust Company currently, and I got my undergrad at RIT in Rochester, New York, in imaging technology. And now I'm in finance and operations, so figure that out. Right after I graduated, I got hired by Olin Corporation, very large multinational firm in their marketing department, and they had a college mentoring program, so I was matched with a VP of operations at that time who, after about a year there, he encouraged me to get my master's. So I started my MBA at Rutgers, and then being from Minnesota, after a few years on the East Coast and living and working in the New York City area, I was like, it's time to come back. So I finished my grad work at St. Thomas in finance, and that was 1991. Anyway, so when I came back here, I worked full-time for a computer training company while I was pursuing my degree. After I graduated from St. Thomas, I went to work for American Express Trust Company. And they were a trust company that handled retirement plan assets for the Fortune 500 group. They're no longer in that business. I left Amex about a year before they sold that to Wachovia, which is now Wells Fargo. And I went to Piper Jaffray Companies and continued in my trust work there. Left there after about when they were purchased, went through another acquisition. So if you want to know about acquisitions and corporate mergers, I've gone through actually 2 or 3 in my career. I went into the consulting world, and I went from a very large company to a company with, I was their 9th employee, and we basically built an employee benefits consulting practice. I was in charge of building the consulting piece that worked with companies to build and offer their retirement plans for their employees. So your 401ks, your profit sharing, executive compensation, things like that. We built that business up to about 45 or 50 employees. We sold that to another firm, and then I left and joined Newport as a business line leader. So my role now is I run the business within Newport Group, that's the trust business, and we have probably 4,000 accounts, and I manage about $50 billion in assets across those 4,000 accounts. So.
Hello, everyone. I'm Del Mardine. I'm a senior product manager at Infor. Infor is an international software company. We're privately held, $3.2 billion in revenue, 17,000 employees, and we have employees in almost every country around the world. I'm based in St. Paul, and I came to Infor by means of an acquisition. I was at a company called Lawson Software, which was a local software company founded in the late 1970s, based in St. Paul, Lawson Software built, and then now Infor builds software applications for human resources operations, financials, supply chain, warehouse management, the software that runs major organizations. My colleagues to my left, we have, our customers are Safe, we are SuperValue and Target and Fairview and Alina. I've met with all of your companies over time for various applications that you run for various reasons. We were acquired by this company called Infor in July 1, 2011, and I had been in the software business and technology since 1996. I'd never heard of them. But what I'm responsible for a set of we call technology platform products. So those are the software tools that build the HR applications, the supply chain, financial applications, et cetera, that then are out there in the market to run major business operations. I'm also a St. Thomas double dipper. I have my undergraduate BA in business and oral communication. It wasn't a double major, but that was a major at the time, business and then oral communication. And then I finished out my MBA in new venture management, so also known as entrepreneurship, at St. Thomas. Very non-traditional. I grew up in a grain and livestock farm, exactly 27 miles northwest of here, and I worked during the day in the farm. I drove down here to the St. Paul campus twice a week. As a working adult student, I didn't walk into a college classroom until I was 28. And then finished out my BA in about 3.5 years, and I had no family connections at the time, and I said I want to get a master's to get up to the same educational level as essentially my peer group, because I was going to decide I didn't want to run the farm forever, and I came to St. Thomas for the MBA program. And if you ever think about going to an MBA program, and you graduate from St. Thomas, the reason I would look at St. Thomas is your undergraduate courses transfer 1-for-1, or at least they did, into the MBA program. So you can get done much more efficiently than if you go somewhere else. So just keep that in mind if you ever think of that far down the road. So I'm responsible for those technology products, the strategy, pricing, profitability for that portfolio of products. Along the way, I started out, my very first corporate job was actually in industrial marketing, product management. The reason I like product management, those of you, when you take your marketing 101, I hope they still teach the 4 Ps of marketing: product, price, place, promotion. P, product, that's what I'm responsible for. Product and pricing, promotion, that's advertising. I don't have any responsibility for that, but all the other 3 Ps, primarily product and pricing, that's what I'm responsible for. Started out in corporate marketing, product management, and industrial manufacturing. I was employee 3 at a dot-com startup in Minneapolis in 1999, at the heart of the dot-com era. That lasted all of 9 months before we ran out of money. And then along the way, I was the co-founder with 2 other individuals for a software company that did that for 5 years, and then now I've been part of major software companies since about 2000.
Thank you. So here's what I want to do. This is your job to sell your functional area, okay? So what I'd love to do is start with Liz. And Liz, I'd like you to talk about the function of finance in terms of the things that you do, right? And then really share with the students how you truly impact the business, and maybe a cool success story of a way that you approach finance in a way that either has a short-term or a long-term impact for the organization.
Sounds good. Do I need to move this closer?
Please. Thank you.
Sounds good. So I have a pretty non-traditional view on finance. I, first of all, understand that finance, it pays the bills, right? It makes sure that we have the money that we need, the cash flow that we need. It helps us decide where to invest, where to stop doing things, and really start prioritizing the work that's going to make a difference in the growth that you want within a company. So I am definitely biased now that I've been in finance for about the past 5 years. I did a lot of time in operations and then in kind of a change management role. I love the finance world just because it really does have the sphere of influence that you need to be able to truly grow the company and show from a analytical view as to which way they can have the biggest impact for the company. So from my unique experience, why I'll say I'm really unique in the way that I'm treating finances, I do it from a data and analytics standpoint. So a lot of what I try to do is understand the business processes, how that translates into the data so that we can drive better business insights and influence the decisions of where to invest our money, when to even evaluate mergers and acquisitions, and really trying to think through what is the best way to spend our money and track and make sure that we're getting the return on that investment. So I would say all in all, like, finance is awesome. This is my first time working in a civil engineering firm too, so I will say I'm pretty impressed with all these engineers and all the things that they do. I was really proud to work with the companies that I worked in the past, but this company is a whole different world as you're starting to support within their sphere of influence. They're doing infrastructure, so really making sure that we're building for a better world around us. And then there's a humongous environmental wing in this company as well. So they're really focused in on solar power and really how do we more environmentally build and grow our infrastructure. The other thing that I will say about the company that I work for that I'm really impressed with is their focus on really diversity and inclusion and starting to invest in the younger generation to ensure that more women and people of diverse backgrounds are starting to see the future of them being in the place of a civil engineer. So typically it hasn't been a high percentage of women or diverse civil engineers, and so it's been really cool to see the amount of time that our CEO spends in really trying to invest in high schools and even junior highs, just to start getting kids to see that this could be the future for them, which will then, I truly believe, have a longer term impact on what it will look like to be a civil engineer in the future. So that's my spiel on why finance and why this is an interesting company.
Okay, so I would say that my company is interesting because we give amazing healthcare delivery to patients. The way that I would sell my role in that is more around being that bridge between the clinical delivery care teams and the finance. You know, our CEO had recently given a message to our organization that I thought really drove home kind of why does finance matter, is because it doesn't matter what your mission is if you don't have a margin, because you won't be able to deliver what you're looking to do if you can't make the margin. And so being very patient focused on how to be giving and delivering the most cutting edge technologically and clinically superior care, but yet how do we do it in a way that we're making a budget so that we can continue to do that and serve those that come to us for their care. I think that coming into my department, it was very interesting in the sense that when I first looked at the finance aspects of our department, they were struggling. What we were listed as gross charges in our monthly spreadsheet versus what our volumes were versus what our expenditures were, there was some clear misalignment in the three. And it took some digging and asking questions and whatnot. And what was really clear was that the staff in that department knew how to give the care delivery, but they didn't understand that some of the decisions that they were making, whether it was how many supplies we kept on a shelf or how many people that we needed to get on our schedule for the day, actually impacted it. And when you're talking about operations, we really drive and manage to a budget. So that's what I focus on, is what's our volumes, what are their expenditures, and how are we managing things, sometimes by the day, sometimes by the week, and oftentimes by the month. When I was working with my team, it was very clear that when I would say we didn't make our volumes this month, you know, what happened? They couldn't drive down to how do we even make those budgets. And so I think learning to how do we teach people who that's not necessarily their background and put it in a way that it means to them, it is that data analytics. It's looking at the finances and translating it in a way that people can understand it. And what's super engaging about that is watching my team go from a group of individuals that were like, we just never make it, to celebrating in our safety huddles on a daily basis on, oh my gosh, we've got X going on, or we found, a waste venue here, and we're gonna save the department $150,000 in supplies in a month. So I think a critical component of an operational leader is making sure that the resources are available, the tools are there, but it's also helping the people that you're working with understand how those things all put together. So when you say, we need to make budget, that means I have to have 112 people have a scan on that CT scanner. Otherwise, we're not utilizing it to the right efficiency, and when we need to replace it, it's not gonna match that business model that's gonna say, please invest, $1.6 million in its replacement. So it's fun to link. I would say, what I would say an operational leader is if you like to problem solve, if you like to connect the dots, and you can ask good questions, you don't have to be necessarily that technical or expert. Your team, oftentimes you have a team full of those. You just have to ask the right questions, and they'll lead you to those answers, and they'll have successes that they can celebrate and be your best advocate to finding that next success.
So I have a question for you guys. How many of you knew what you wanted to major in when you came to college? A few of you? Okay, awesome. Well, I thought I was a rarity in that case. I actually knew I wanted to go into accounting when I was in high school. And the reason why I wanted to go into accounting was because I had a really awesome accounting professor or accounting teacher in high school. Half the time we would do accounting problems, and the other half of the day we would watch The Office. So it was really awesome. Also, my dad told me that accounting was a great profession because people always need accountants. So I knew it would be a steady job for the rest of my life. I also loved problem solving, and thinking of debits equaling credits was like awesome problem solving. I quickly realized when I went into the accounting profession that it wasn't always black and white. There's a lot of judgment involved. One thing that's been really awesome with the company I work for, PwC, is we have a ton of clients in the area. So I've been at the firm for about 5 years now, and I've already been at probably over 30 companies, a lot of them that you've probably heard of. And one thing that's really cool about that is I've been able to learn about the entire company, not just their accounting. So I've learned about IT, talked to the higher ups, and talked about enterprise risk management, which has been a really neat opportunity to learn about how each company operates, and then also take best practices from each of the different companies that I've seen and help other companies improve their processes. One project that's been really neat that I've been working on lately is for a company that is looking to go public soon. And so it's been a really rewarding process because I've been able to meet with a lot of different business owners, help them build out their processes. We literally have 4-hour meetings, which sounds boring, but it's really cool to sit down, hear what people are doing on a day-to-day, and then we do a Visio diagram documenting their processes and where they have controls and where they could potentially improve. So it's not exactly what you would think an accountant would do, but it just gives you an idea that you have a lot of opportunities within this profession. And also it's been a really rewarding experience because these people only know their company, and so I've been able to bring different best practices to their company and help them as they're looking to go public. Another thing that I mentioned earlier was I started with doing financial statement audits for private companies. And I had an interest in learning a little bit more about IT. It wasn't necessarily my background in college. I took a computer science class, which is the capstone class for accounting. So I ended up transferring into the group, and I think it's been a really good opportunity for me, especially now that the world is being more digitalized, and our firm has had a huge initiative where they've invested in our entire company to go through training, learning about bots and how to use different workflows. which I'm sure a lot of you use Excel in your classes. But what they call some of these workflows are Excel on steroids because there's all these bots involved. And it's coming down the pipeline quick. I know a lot of companies are looking to us to help them implement these kind of tools, and they're looking to you guys who are in college to learn about these tools and help implement them too. So yeah, so I've had a lot of different opportunities in the accounting world, a lot more than I thought I would.
So, what I really, I'm selling human resources, or, so kind of similar to what Julie said about if you don't have the margin, you're not going to be able to kind of get to your mission. I would say similarly with the people on your team. If you don't have people who know what they're doing, why they're there, how to do it, how to interface with the customer in a way that makes the customer, especially in healthcare setting, feel comfortable and feel that they're in competent hands, you're not going to be successful as an organization or as successful as you want to be. So I have always been really drawn to human resources, and again, in particular, my function is training and development and leadership development because of the development. I think that the personal drive a lot of people have to continue to build themselves, to continue to build their skills, learn new things, apply new things. I mean, I think you're probably already hearing some of that from across this panel, that it is by no means a linear path. And the more, there is no such thing as too much experience or too much knowledge in different areas. That it all comes back to serve you well. And from a human resources perspective, that is what I find get the most joy out of in terms of what I get to do every day, is helping people find that for themselves. In the bigger human resources function, it's similar and it's different, right? So where training and development help team members build those skills and again help them understand where they could best develop, benefits helps make sure people feel secure and that they can be at work focusing on their job because they have the benefits and equitable compensation for what they're doing, and that they feel valued in what they're making from the company, and quite honestly what they're providing back to the company, that there's a balance there. Our labor negotiations, so unions and organizations, human resources often deals with the unions and has to build that partnership as well. There's also, there's probably a million more that I'm forgetting. HR solutions, the technology. So Delmar mentioned, Infor is a software that human resource functions use to track, put their employee information into. And so there's a whole technology piece to human resources that can be really powerful and impactful. And when all those functions within human resources can work together effectively and can share information and do the analytics on their people, all of a sudden you get this momentum that you can really start to leverage your team members and make them the human resources that you need to be successful as a company. And so that's really what I love about human resources, is a lot of times we have this, I'm gonna screw up the stat, but it doesn't matter, like essentially people are like 50%, the expense that we have as an organization on compensation and like benefit expenses is like more than 50% of our expenditures in a year. And yet we focus so much more on the gloves that we order or the masks or the oxygen tanks, and we can't track where our employees are. And so there's this thing where you have to invest in your people to get to where you want to be, and again, that's why I think HR is the best. So, sorry guys and gals.
We like HR.
Yeah.
Except when you have to take your 2-hour, trainings of some kind.
Well, that's the compliance department. That's not human
Yeah.
resources.
Trust operations, some similar things to what Julie said, but within my organization and why I like the role that I am in is that I depend on many different business units across our organization to do things that the trust company needs to be successful. So you do need to have really good people skills. You need to be a problem solver, and you need to look for ways to do things efficiently. The focuses across Newport are, we're a client service organization. We want to make it easy for clients to do business with us. And across the organization, we want everyone to have the attitude that I got this. So, which has been huge, that I came from a small consulting firm to now a firm that has 1,400 employees across the country. And I have trading operations in St. Petersburg, Florida. I have client services in Sacramento. There's trust offices in New York, LA, and DC, and Minneapolis, where I am. So you have to have those communication skills to, because you're not flying everywhere to do meetings face-to-face. It's go-to meetings, it's WebEx, it's phone calls, it's emails, and you have to know which one is appropriate for what you're trying to accomplish. An email is not always the best thing, and sometimes you do have to fly somewhere to get, to do a face-to-face meeting. So, we manage a lot of money. We are responsible for a lot of participant retirement plans and participants that are working for companies that are putting their money away towards retirement. And it's really, it's a great organization. When I came here after the consulting practice was sold, I actually worked with a career consultant to figure out what I want to do when I grow up. And I didn't want to stay with the company that we sold to. And so it was time well spent, learned a lot about myself, helped me really focus on organizations that I was interested in working for. I had a short list just because of my past experience. And finding a position that really fit my skills and, staying in financial services, getting in an operational role and this, as I said, it's enjoyable when you're in a position that you're making an impact for an organization and you're using your skills, across different business lines. So, and that's what our operations really is about. It's, managing all these different processes in an efficient manner. So, and there's nothing the same every day. I have nothing, every day is different. So, Omar.
Why would I recommend product management or marketing in general? As I mentioned in my opening remarks, I grew up and ran my family farm along with my parents until I was 27 years old, decided to go off and do something else. And so I was always used to making decisions and being responsible for running a business. So as I was going through my undergraduate here, and then especially in the graduate program here at St. Thomas, as I was experiencing all the different courses. And my recommendation would be, as you take your different courses, do you really like finance? Because you're all going to have to take a course on every one of these major topics up here, right? Because you just have to. And the reason for that is you find out what you're good at, but you have to know a little bit about everything if you go out and decide to get a business career going forward. So I was going through that. I was essentially doing a process of elimination. Finance, not for me. Accounting, not for me. Operations, really not for me. But marketing kind of attracted me, but not marketing like advertising. It was more like that product P of the 4 Ps, product management, the sub-discipline within marketing, because many companies, including mine, call product managers the CEO, Chief Executive Officer of your assigned product set. So I'm responsible for the profitability at my company for my assigned products, as is every product manager. So we are responsible for the bottom line within our product set within the overall company. So product management of marketing has a chance to make decisions, drive strategy. What I really like about product management as I got into it more is the fact that you work up and down your company, organizationally, wherever you work, but also horizontally, meaning you work with HR people and operations and finance and sales. Every functional area you have to work with because you need to work with those people internally to get a product designed, built, and out the door and launched successfully. But you also have to go up and down the organization from a developer working on a given product to the chief operating officer and sell, well, this is why we have to devote resources to this project, or your chief financial officer to get resources. So you work, at least in my role, I think in most product management roles, you work up and down the company and across the company. So you're never pigeonholed. You're never bored. I'm never bored on a daily basis. So not only working up and down the organization internally, but also externally. Product management is a very externally focused role if you do it well, because you have to know what's going on in the market. What are the trends in the market? What's going on with customers? What are the dynamics? And you need to be ahead of that, because you take a product to market too late, well, then you're not going to be successful. So I like the aspect of being public-facing and internally facing. I really like software. My first role was in industrial product management, and I got assigned within my first year to build a pretty cool at the time software application for selecting a product on a laptop computer run off a CD-ROM. Do you know what a CD-ROM is? But they still exist, but a CD-ROM. And so a software project. And I just thought, this is so cool, because in software, what I love about it, if you can imagine it, you can build it, because you're not constrained by physical space. It's just, software is zeros and ones. So if you're on a whiteboard and you can imagine something really cool, you can go off and build it with enough time, money, and resources. Right now, one of the big technical trends, in addition, we talked here a little bit earlier about data analytics. Analytics is just the top of mind at every software company in the world right now. The other is artificial intelligence. That is really cool. We have just built out our own artificial intelligence platform. And artificial intelligence, I think, is going to revolutionize how many industries are operating. For example, we were mentioning recruiting employees. I just recently saw some studies coming from our human resources management product managers that some research organizations are testing what kind of candidates you get when you use an artificial intelligence platform to evaluate employees versus real people, like recruiters. And the first results are showing that you get higher diversity and higher inclusion by letting the machine pick your candidates to interview versus people. And the theory is because it eliminates unconscious bias, which I think is interesting, because all of us have LinkedIn profiles, and LinkedIn, if you have a LinkedIn profile, which I highly recommend, by the way, but I question putting a picture out there. Because why do you put a picture out there? And LinkedIn, you can't, every time you log into LinkedIn, I haven't got a picture, and it says, why do you have a picture posted? Well, the reason is, why would I want to intentionally give a visual cue to put an unconscious bias potential out there for a human recruiter? So I think in the near future, you're going to see social platforms take away pictures, and any signals that would be triggers for unconscious bias from a recruiting perspective, because the research is already showing that the machines can pick better candidates than the people can, and faster. Like, if you pick better candidates in 9 seconds versus 3 weeks or 2 weeks. So software product management is where I fit, because I love the variety, love the opportunity to be on cutting edge. And if you're interested in anything like on the cutting edge, then that technology career of any sort, I'd highly recommend it. And there's also going to be a huge call for a new role that's out there called a data scientist. I think St. Thomas actually has a program around data analytics here in the business program. So if you're interested in data analytics or the new cutting thing, or a data scientist, check that out, because that is the new job that every software company, at least, and other companies are looking for, is how do you process all this data? Because there's plenty of data, but nobody knows how to make sense of it. That's the issue.
So students, we are going to take a fair amount of time to address your questions, but I want to do some quick hit advice and information for the students. So let's start with where you stay on top of industry, professional trends, where you get your information. And let's not talk about education. So let's think about the marketplace, journals, things of that nature. And for you guys, the reason we're doing that is you're going to find that there's a lifelong learning theme that you're going to face that you're not going to get your degree and be done. And so it's the question of where do you get your resource. We talk a lot in digital marketing here at St. Thomas about this notion that the rate of information change is so fast right now that if you're in a particular field that is very highly technology driven, very highly digital driven, you will go to bed smart on Friday and you will wake up dumb on Monday because all this stuff has changed between now and then. So with that theme, where do you get your information? How do you stay on top of what's happening?
Yep, so I would say a couple of things that I do, and one actually is part advice in your time here at St. Thomas. Go and take an econ class called Money and Banking. In that class, they taught me how to read The Economist. I still read The Economist every single week when their new issue comes out to stay on top of what's actually happening from a total market standpoint for the global markets. It also helps me just understand how different companies are running, the problems that different areas of the world are dealing with and how they're overcoming it. It really helps you critically think. And I will say the biggest thing that I walked away from St. Thomas is the ability to critically think. I don't remember I took finance classes. I don't necessarily remember the exact model that they taught me. That's what Google's for. If I need to remember how to create any model, Google is your best friend. You can learn so much. YouTube, you can watch so many YouTube videos on how to create a really cool Tableau report or Power BI report. The other big thing that I will say is that there's an amazing analytics community in the Twin Cities. The Mini Analytics has over 1,600 people that show up every quarter to their events. So I know they've had them at the Science Museum, at the University of Minnesota.
And here.
And here?
And here, we did sports analytics here,
I didn't
marketing
go to the sports.
analytics.
Yeah, I don't like sports, sorry, I'm kind of too big of a nerd to like sports analytics. But I will say the Mini Analytics community has been humongous. I know I've kept in touch with Dr. Hartman over in the econ department, and they have a really cool econ and analytics program that they're starting up as well that I've met with some of their students. There's really cool things that are happening here. The business area is definitely, I got a lot of value out of the courses that I took here, but critically think and stay in touch with the communities that you can build around yourself and be a geek. Just like dig into whatever seems interesting to you and find that community around you that is also people who are asking those questions and who want to share their geeky stories, and that's how you're going to stay relevant and up to date on the cool things that are happening.
For myself, I would say I am a member of 4 professional organizations, so we get literature through that and keeping up to date on some of the readings. I would also say attend conferences when they're offered and available, because a lot of times that's where you're going to see some of the cutting edge items. I also have stayed very close to both laboratory and gotten into the radiology sciences because the technology that is available is changing so quickly. Is just what's coming versus when you're making large investments. Is it going to be relevant today? Yes. Is it going to be relevant tomorrow? You need to know that before you invest. So I think it is kind of looking at that. What I will say is St. Thomas helped me learn really how to dig into find out where national benchmarks are or what are standards. And so when you're doing comparisons, are you comparing to yourself? Are you comparing to your market? Are you comparing to nationally or globally? And so how can you do those sorts of decisions when you can find those benchmarks that are going to make a difference? I would also echo the YouTube. Have learned how to do workflows in SharePoint, and there's, from an operations tracking perspective, I'm YouTubing things at night that I'm able to then put into play the next day that automates tracking of items that I used to have to spend 20 emails to do, that I can now get it set up and electronically track for me. So I think endorsing that lifelong learning is it's constantly being open and aware. When you're maybe not all of our ages, but when you're, say, my age, ask your kids. So I'm looking at an audience of my children essentially, and the first thing I do is go, show me how to do that. I would also, from an advice piece, and I think you touched on electronically, I would venture to guess there's been some Twitter searches already while we've been in here tonight. I bet there's been some Instagrams and all of that kind of stuff. Stay on top of it, but be smart about it. That is a whole nother world, and what you guys will gain professionally, face to face, or those personal interactions, mostly the electronic, is vastly different. And one of the things that I see regularly is people who shift to, I just want to interact through that electronic interface, because that's what we do every day. But I will tell you, it is so much more far powerful when you have that person or personal connection. When you want to get a job, you want to get something approved, you want to get that next level of leadership or promotion, you make those people connections is going to be huge in allowing you to make that next step outside of just that technology aspect of it. So don't miss the people piece of it. Huge.
A few things come to mind. One is super easy, watch the news. When I was in college, I feel like I never flipped on the news. I was always watching Netflix or something else, but it's really important to stay on top of current events. Even as you're going through interviews, you might get asked a question about what have you heard about in the news, or different industries. And as you think about the companies that you want to work in, either subscribing to a business journal and getting some, updates on your phone, read them in the morning of just quick hit current events, or also just being aware of what's going on in an industry at the company that you're working for. I work on a large variety of clients, so I have to keep up on agriculture, what's going on in healthcare, manufacturing, retail. So there's so many different resources out there for you guys. You just have to take advantage of it. Trying to think what else. My firm has been really supportive in the digital aspect. So they have pushed a lot of information out on us via email. So just taking the time to read through it. I'm sure you all get a lot of emails every day, but just taking 5 minutes to read through an article and try to take a nugget of information out of it. One thing my company did too, which was helpful, is they have these digital bursts. So I'll be working and in the corner of my computer, it'll pop up and say, did you know something or other? And then click to read more. And so you just take a minute to read through something related to digital. We also had trivia, which was fun. So a lot of us would get together and you could win money. So we had specific articles that we had to read every week, and then they would have 10 trivia questions on it, and the whole firm would play. So yeah, digital fitness. So my firm,
Follow it every day.
yeah, and I think it's rolled out now at St. Thomas.
It
right?
is, it is.
Yeah.
So just so you guys know, University of St. Thomas is a formal partnership with PwC. They were kind enough through their business leadership to really come in and help train faculty in our university leadership around what they're calling the 8 essential technologies. So I would encourage you to do the Google. I think Liz is exactly right. Do the Google, 8 essential technologies, PwC, the information will come up. And then what you want to do is read a little bit further, convergence. Because what's really interesting is how does artificial intelligence and virtual reality, how do they play together? And what are some of the companies that are playing in that space? And we are in a technology hotbed. This Mini Analytics group, they've got an event coming up, I think, in 2 weeks. And they do tech showcases with these emerging companies. It is like groovy, funky stuff. But it's interesting because you can see somebody from a data science perspective, and then you can see somebody more from a corporate company startup perspective, and just see where all of these functions play in. Okay, I'm not a panelist, sorry.
No,
but
that's
I'm
okay.
really
But that's-
excited about this.
It's called Digital Fitness app, right?
Yep,
And
digital
students-
fitness app.
Yeah,
Yep.
so download that and read up, because you guys will be expected, no matter what type of business role you go into, you'll be expected to know about these technologies. So be prepared.
Yep.
See, I just learned something. So do events like this, and you'll usually get some nugget to take back. The thing that popped to my mind was reading the news. I don't watch the news as much. I'm not a TV watcher, but I love to read. And so I think reading the news every night, I've gotten in the habit of that. And then I'm signed up for several kind of daily briefs that come in the morning that I usually scan through. I don't read it all, but the things that look interesting and jump out. And it is amazing to see how the connections start to form and how you start it's just a critical thinking skill, I guess is kind of what it boils down to, those connections that start to pop up and you start to get an awareness that you didn't have an article before you read it. The other thing that came to mind is building in time for reflection, which, as I say, it sounds super cheesy, but there are things that you learn every day if you just take the time to kind of pause and reflect on what the heck just happened and what did I just learn and what did I just realize about a situation, a technology, a person. And so I know I, as a leadership style thing, I really challenge my team members every week. In fact, it's on our one-on-ones. What did you learn this week? Sometimes it's big, sometimes it's small. And then kind of going further in that conversation to say, okay, well, based on that learning, what are you going to do differently? And again, no matter how big, no matter how small. And so many adults, as you kind of move through education and being in classrooms and having papers due, and you move into like a job, you learn by doing stuff. You learn on the job. 70% of adult learning happens there. So how do you make sure you're catching as much of that 70% as it's happening? And so I think reflection is a really big thing to do, and it's a real easy thing to do because you don't have to spend any money to do it. You can do it in 30 seconds or less probably most days, and it's a really easy habit to form. So I think reading and reflection would be my 2 tips.
All right. Well, I belong to 2 different industry organizations that are finance and banking related, and risk management. So those are kind of the obvious to join, either national or regional sections of the business that you're in. But I second reading and learning about things outside your organization, outside of your business. That's super important because you can learn so many different things, and you say, hey, that's cool, how can I use that in my job? It can be anything from, I get a couple of daily news feeds in my email, New York Times. There's a really cool one that's called 538. It's Nate Silver's thing, but what it is, it's not political, it's numbers. And the headline will be like 38 or 15. And then there'll be a little blurb about what that number is from the day before. And then you can click on it. It can be anything from environment to social responsibility to, the number of birds in some country that went extinct. But just like tonight with Delmar talking about artificial intelligence, is the last conference that I attended, there was a section on AI in financial services, and taking that information back to your organization and saying, how can I apply that into my role and my job to make it more efficient and easier for people across the organization to work with me. So I read a lot too, also have a hobby of some kind. It can be, I'm a runner, I do bicycle, I'm a cyclist. Those are kind of my reflection times. I can get out and go on a 30-minute run, even downtown Minneapolis, over lunch, and just kind of brain dump and clear the air. Explore those too, because you really have to carve out time for yourself to be a successful person, and also carve out time for your family and friends. Don't be working these 80, 90-hour work weeks that you hear about. You're going to burn out so fast, and then you're going to just not love life. And it's really the family and friends balance is super important. You know, and I've always tried to do that, you know, even when I first got out of college. So put that on your to-do list.
The way I keep in touch with what's going on in my industry, I use Google Alerts. So if you're familiar with Google, Google Alerts is you can just, if you're interested in a company or a topic or a sports team, whatever you're interested in, you can go to Google, you can create a Google Alert or one or many, and then when Google finds a new hit or a new article, new update for a particular website or a company, press release, whatever, they'll send you an email. Here's your update on ABC company, and then just hit it, take a look at it, read it, or just ignore it. So, you know, Google dominates the world right now, good for bad or indifferent, but Google Alerts, I think, is the easiest way to keep in touch with any given topic. I like to read a lot. I'll echo the panel. Reading, I think, is critical. I tend to like to actually read magazines and physical material, newspapers, magazines, books. Online, because I'm online for so many reasons, that just gets to be so much burnout. That would be an easy way to keep up to date on regular topics of interest. If you're interested in startups or technology, the Twin Cities is really a hotbed for that kind of thing, and anyone can go. There's a couple of organizations here locally around technology, not just software, but technology or startup companies. One is called Minibar. If you do a recent Google search on that, Minibar is specifically around the software industry. There's software people or startups that are interested in software, and they meet at bars. And so you drink beer and you go and you listen to presentations, like 5-minute presentations on a given company or a new product. There's a kind of a spin-off called Mini Demo, which is here locally, and there's various ideas of this around different cities around the country. So Mini Demo is you have some idea for a software product or a given product, and you have 5 minutes to show it to the audience and get feedback, and it's a great way to get ideas and networking. Anybody can just show up, and they're all free. If you're interested in marketing in general, for a free resource, Pragmatic Marketing is essentially, I think, the preeminent consulting and training company around marketing in general, or product management for the technology industry, not just software technology, but high technology like computers or high technology equipment. They have a website. Look them up, Pragmatic Marketing, lots of free materials out there. So what would I recommend from a course perspective? I would say pay attention and put some effort into your liberal arts courses here at St. Thomas. Because, as we've been talking about here, if you're on the technical side, or on the specific functional area, all that's going to be outdated 3 years after you get out of school. But guess what doesn't change? People don't change very quickly. So the human animal, that's what your liberal arts course is about. Explain the human animal. What's going on around the world? Why is China rising now? Why do these things happen in the Middle East? If you have no context on what's going on from Chinese history for 3,000 years, you have no context on what's going on in China right now. So pay attention and lean into your liberal arts courses would be my recommendation, because that's the skill set that you're going to take that's not going to erode when you walk out of these classrooms sometime in the future. And in particular, from a liberal arts perspective, I would highly recommend paying attention and exercising your public speaking skills. Every company, I think I would say on this stage, is looking for people that can communicate professionally, both written and verbal communication. Because at the end of the day, people hire people and they buy goods and services from people they trust. And how do you build trust, right? Whether it's an interpersonal relationship or business relationship, through personal interaction. And that's every personal interaction, from a phone call to an email to a face-to-face meeting. So for example, an email, it is really, in my opinion, incumbent when you get out in the work world and even before the work world to have professionally written or styled emails. So an email with all lowercase, no punctuation, keep in mind your CEO of your company might be reading that. It's easy to forward an email or accidentally forward it. So I always assume my CEO is going to read every email I ever write. So be aware when you communicate, that's going to travel. Anything electronic now is out there forever. So verbal communication, written communication, and always be professional in your written communications and verbal communication, I think is a big step up. And the companies, at least in my technology company and other organizations I interact with, the skill set to be able to interact with people is a highly sought after skill. And if you're interested at all in the software industry, as I mentioned, philosophy or the liberal arts courses are actually a good way to get into technology, especially software, because I mentioned earlier, if you can think it, you can build it. Well, you first have to be able to think it, right? Create it. So the creative aspect's the hard part. The coding is not the hard part. The creative is the hard part. One of the tangible example, a colleague I work with who's a director of software development, he was a music major in college. He was a high school band director for 10 years, and he didn't write a line of code professionally until he moved off into the software industry. Now he's running a team of about 40 people in St. Paul. What does band director have to do with building software? Well, it's a creative skill, and it turns out that creative skills are actually really, really good in the technology industry, in particular software. So that's my piece of advice: professional communication, and work on your verbal communication skills, and especially public speaking.
Thank you. So I want to get you guys ready to start asking questions. Give me a show of hands. Do people have some ready that they'd like to fire up and get out there? All right, I'm going to steal one of these. Sorry. Who's first? I saw you had your hand raised.
Might as well.
You're in.
Hi, my name is Ikechukwu Apati, and I'm a first year here at St. Thomas. I know none of you majored in advertising or anything like that, but I started a podcast coming into college, like my summer of senior year, and I was wondering how I'd be able to make the reach greater. Because right now I'm getting 200 views, and I'm wondering how I'd be able to up the amount to 500 in 2-3 months.
That's an interesting one.
That's a good question.
Yeah, while you guys are thinking, I can maybe answer a little bit.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I think you have the power to do within this university is find a network and build a network within faculty and departments and resources. So my recommendation to you is to reach out to COJO, Communications and Journalism, and they are going to have some expertise around how you can build your influencer network so that you can grow that base of folks who's following your podcast. And the other thing is do the Google, how do I grow my footprint for influencer marketing? And there's a lot of resources out there. And if you come talk to me later, there's a gentleman who's in the Schultz School of Entrepreneurship. He's one of our Schultz scholars. And he has built an influencer framework, and he's actually been hired by Target and some other companies to help build business through that influencer piece, and he could help you. Okay?
All right, thank you.
I would say as an avid podcast listener, because I commute from Farmington to Minneapolis, I would say think about what you're selling in your podcast, right? Because, I listen to podcasts for all sorts of reasons, and, as we were talking about it, some of it is really focused on current events and other news, but I would also say, Wait, Don't Tell Me is one of my, because there's some humor, but it's current events and all of those sorts of things. And so think about what your podcast message is, what you're trying to drive, because you're marketing that. And so then when you're starting to do the product development to go, okay, how can I make this product podcast more rich? What are the things that I need to include in delivery of that that's going to encourage people talking about it, people sharing that information, all of those aspects of it. So you probably have something that you are really engaged with. That's the spark to start with. But now you have to start doing that market research to say, why are other people listening to me, and what would turn somebody to go, that's interesting, and why would I want to check that out?
My name's Nick. I'm a second year here, and I'm wondering how much value would all of you put on foreign languages after I would graduate here?
I could take that one. I'm going to answer this at a little bit biased. My daughters all did immersion through kindergarten, so they are fluent in Spanish already in college. I have one daughter at Augustana, and she took the placement, and she got the highest score they ever saw. She studied in Argentina. So it's a global economy. It doesn't have to be Spanish. It can be French. It can be whatever. it can be Chinese. The value that companies put on having that second language, we have on our call center, we have people that speak several different languages because our client base is not just English. Even though we're only doing business in the United States, you have people that are employed that speak many languages. So we have to be able to help them when they call in and say, hey, how much is in my retirement plan, and what's this money that came from my employer? And so it's huge. So if you have an interest in the language, pursue it. Reading, writing, speaking, study abroad. If you study abroad, and I know there's a lot of opportunities at St. Thomas to do that, when you're taking your classes over there, take them in that language. Force yourself to do that. Don't just go over there and take your classes in English. Take them in that native language. You'll be surprised at how quickly you can pick up that language by being immersed, even for a short period of time.
Thank you.
Can I add something to that? And I think it kind of depends too on like what you want to do and how you would use that language. I think that's a great example of needing and having a higher value on a language. I actually would say, I think another consideration when you're learning a foreign language is the cultural elements that you pick up, which if you're never going to leave Minnesota because you want to work at Target when you graduate forever and be a Target lifer or whatever, it might not be as important to have the language, but to have gone abroad, to have had the experience with the culture, and to have exposed yourself to just diversity and just all the differences that come with it. I think that has I personally place a higher value on that ability to be comfortable with people who maybe are different and to be able to still be listening to what they are saying, which I think it's a twofer with a language, especially when you start going abroad. So I think that's another consideration.
All right, thank you.
Hi, I'm Christian Scow. I am a second year here. I just wanted to ask, for those of us who currently do not have or currently will have not very clear-cut majors, I'm an entrepreneurship major with not really a huge passion for starting up right out of college. How can we best find a fit into a company not having that technical background? I had a feeling you were going to answer that question.
My recommendation to the whole audience, not for your question, is to get every internship opportunity you can get in your calendar, because that is the way to learn if you like a specific functional discipline or not, whether you like a company or not. It's a great way to network. So my recommendation would be to look for internships in the areas or companies that you think are of interest. So, and by the way, nonprofit companies really look for internships. So everybody looks for internships at Target, just pick a company, right? Or 3M, everybody picks like the top 4 local companies that they want an internship in. Fine, but realize you're going to be competing with 500 whatever other candidates for internship. But Habitat here for Humanity or Catholic Charities or the Girl Scouts, the Boy Scouts, all those other nonprofits that are here locally are also looking for internships. Same functional area, finance, accounting, or HR, IT, and other candidates don't necessarily think of the nonprofits. So in general, my suggestion would be take a look at internships, and it gives you a view into what the company would be like. I'll give you a tidbit of wisdom from the MBA program at St. Thomas back in the day in New Adventure Management. And so that tended to be a cohort going through that 2 years of program at night. And the director of the St. Thomas program at the time said, for some reason in Minnesota, people who want to start a business, they have a vision, a goal of opening up their own restaurant. My recommendation for people that want to open their own restaurant is get a job as a dishwasher in a restaurant first to see if you like the restaurant business before starting a restaurant. So if any of you think you're going to start a business at some time, work in that industry first. Or if you think you want to open your own coffee shop, be a barista and find out, do you really like this or not? Because if you're going to start your own company, I can tell you from growing up on a farm, there's no way you could walk away from your own business, ever. You're there 24/7, 365. So you have to really love what you're doing to start and launch your own business because you can't ever walk away from it. But internship is a way to kind of, essentially say, date before you get married, if you want to think of it that way.
And I would add to that a lot of, I'll probably have an answer every time. I will add to that, I think a lot of times programs, or companies too, have rotation programs, right, that you can get into, and within an 18 or 24-month window, you can actually rotate from operations to marketing to HR. And so I think those are opportunities, and they're jobs, you get hired in full-time, and the intention usually is you rotate through the organization, and then it's kind of like a, an expedited development track. So that might be another good way as you start getting into actually looking for jobs and when you're graduating to consider that.
And I'm gonna add on to that, just whatever you get into, be your best. Because a lot of times, I'm sure everybody at this table has done their time doing something that they really didn't love, and that's why we're not still doing it. But being your best always is going to carry with you. And so ensure that if you're gonna be that dishwasher, you be the best dishwasher there. Just because that business person may be your first, job recommendation that's gonna say, you know what? They were always here on time, they did their very best every time, and we could depend on them. And that's the sort of thing that, okay, I learned that I didn't love it, but I learned how to articulate what I wanted to do or identify that. And they also would say that I did it very well.
Yeah, so one other thing that I'd say too is talk to a lot of people who are doing what you think you want to do. I know when I was all your age, I thought I wanted to be a lawyer. I went and met with 5 different lawyers in different practices, doing different things. And I walked away from it thinking I do not want to be a lawyer. And it saved me a lot of money and a lot of time to figure out that that's not the right track for me. And what it also did is it started to build my network. So the other thing that I would say is start connecting with people. Start like taking those cultural connections that of the interests that you're going to have in different areas. You never know where your career is going to go. You never know, like, these people sitting next to you, like, you might be calling them up in 12 years and saying, hey, I'm starting up a company and I remember you having a passion for this. Start building your network here. Start building your network with the people that you think you maybe want to have that kind of a job someday. And those are the kind of experiences that not only will it influence the decisions that you're making now at this early point in your career, but it'll also give you that feedback partner that when you start going down the path that you go down, you can say, hey, can I call you up and talk, like have you talk me through some of these questions that I'm gonna have? And those will be the connections that will really help you in the long run, and to be able to have those feedback partners that can help you think through how you wanna drive your career.
I'll just add one comment is, don't stress out about what your major is going to be. You guys are freshmen and sophomores generally in the room. I went from photography to financial services. That's kind of as far apart than you can possibly get. And what Delmar said is, take those liberal arts classes. As someone who's in a hiring role, I look for people who have really rounded backgrounds, and a good resume. And what did you do? What were some of your interests in college? You may end up taking the philosophy class from a professor that totally changes your life, but you're in the business school. So look around. Don't be afraid to take those classes that you're not even going to be interested, because you never know. That's kind of I think the beauty of going to a liberal arts college and university is you have those opportunities.
Hi, I'm Joe Alberts. I'm a sophomore, finance declared, but I'm still kind of up in the air. Kind of an open-ended question, but I'm an out-of-state student, so what do you suggest is the best course of action to do, like an out-of-state internship, or how do you kind of orient to not being in Minnesota, I guess you can say? Because I know St. Thomas likes to orient their students to do jobs and internships here, but I don't know if you have any experiences with that, trying to maybe do an internship back at home or somewhere else. So I don't know if you have any thoughts about that.
While you're thinking, I can jump in. So my team leads the Alumni Association here at University of St. Thomas. And we have this groovy technology called LinkedIn Navigator. So I tell people I can find dead bodies in that baby. I can do a keyword search, your home state, the particular area you want to be. We can take a look at other affinity elements of your network, where you went to high school, you know, do you golf, things of that nature. And we can find you alumni from St. Thomas who might be in your finance field in a particular state of interest, or find particular companies and things of that nature. So we always say here at St. Thomas, the Tommy Network works, and the responsibility of our alumni is to make that network work for our students. And so I really encourage you to take advantage of that resource. There's other resources in career services. I think there needs to be more integration of career services and alumni, because our alumni today alone, you can see, I've got these folks here, I had 10 yesterday. Today I connected a kid in finance with 11 business leaders in town. So those are the types of things that we can do, but you have to ask.
Yeah, and I think it goes back to, I guess, the comment I made earlier about, I mean, it's depending on where you're going, I think it's just a good experience and a good stretch. And there is something to be said about pushing yourselves outside of your comfort zone. So getting out, if you're from Minnesota, you're from the Twin Cities, getting something out of state, whether it's through an internship or, you know, your first job. I mean, looking, and there's kind of no time, like when you're first getting out of your, when you're graduating undergrad and you're probably early 20s, and you don't really have most likely a family that you're having to support. It's just kind of you and, you know, the open road or whatever. So I think there is, it is a good opportunity to get out there and get into a situation you haven't been in before, and having to learn to navigate that. That just builds that critical thinking and that ability to kind of interface and connect with other people.
Okay.
Thank you.
Is that helpful?
Yeah, thank you.
All right, I gotta make an observation as a chick. Ladies, you guys have been really quiet. We are not moving forward till we have a female ask a question. Sorry. All right, come on.
Behind you.
Awesome. Thank you, my friend.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Rachel Winstock, and I'm a freshman here at St. Thomas. And I was wondering, for each of your concentrations, what major or minor would you like highly recommend pairing with besides foreign language?
Well, I know I did econ with a business minor, and I mean, I loved econ. So I feel like it did a really nice job of allowing me to do fun things like get into game theory, which I feel like is incredibly helpful in the business world. It also helped me think things through from a macro level and a micro level. Its ability to build your critical thinking skills was phenomenal. I really enjoyed it. And then having that business minor to go along with it allowed me to get the visibility to truly how like the business world works, which was very valuable coming into my career.
Okay, so we have a couple of things that we want to do, and then we're going to leave 15 or so minutes for you to just directly interface with these folks and ask the questions you don't want to ask out loud. So the first thing is, if you have not completed that sign-up sheet, I know it's bouncing around and people are borrowing pens, let's just keep up with that, okay? Really quick, one piece of advice for a college student. Personal, professional, how you operate, one piece of advice. Delmar's thinking really hard, but we should make him.
I didn't know if you were.
Only one.
Only one.
No.
Manage your social networks, your social platforms, because whatever you put on your social platforms now doesn't ever go away, and companies research those. So just be aware and cognizant of what you post on any social platform you may belong to. So think of all the athletes you've heard about in the last 4 or 5 years, where tweets that they wrote 10 years ago, 5 years ago, all of a sudden come out and they were just making some offhand remark on Twitter, And now it comes up when Josh Hader is in the All-Star game last year for the Brewers, right? So just be aware of your social platforms that you may use.
Awesome.
I would just say, as I said previously, take some classes outside of your normal realm of thinking. And then I told this to my daughters, I said, don't sweat it if you get a C or a D on one quiz or one exam. It's not the end of the world. Because I know you guys are, especially the freshmen coming in, and you got into this school because of your grades, because you're a good student, because you had extracurriculars. You can do the work, but don't stress out over one quiz or one exam. It's not gonna. When you're interviewing, we don't ask you what your grade point average is. We don't. You can talk to HR. They don't either. So have fun. This is a great time in your life.
Yeah, I think I would echo that. I would say don't stress out too. I mean, you're gonna have to pick a major, right, and a minor maybe. And I think from an undergraduate perspective, that certainly helps, and it's also not critical. I mean, I'll speak for myself, but I think there's several of us up here where we started one thing and we ended up somewhere else. And I would say focus more on the skills and the more like general knowledge that you're getting out of your time here than learning how to do, human resources exactly like the book says. It's not important, quite honestly. It is more about what you are taking away yourselves individually, how you're building those skills to develop and figure it out on your own when you get into the real world. Because those are skills I still rely on a daily basis. Like, oh my gosh, how am I going to pull this off? And you figure it out. And if you're not focusing on that and you're focusing on what's in the book, you're going to too much over focusing on what's in the book. You're going to probably miss some key skills.
I would say two things. One, keep a positive attitude and be curious. One thing that I found that was challenging from transferring from college into the real world was realizing that I didn't know everything. I have a type A personality, go figure, I'm an accountant. But just realizing that, you're not the smartest person in the room. You might not have all the technical knowledge, but you'll pick it up. And if you have a good attitude and you ask questions, people will know that you're willing to try. And if you're positive, people will be drawn to working with you, which it just goes a long way.
I would say don't be afraid of your moral compass. A lot of times you may be faced with decisions that at the end of the day, you're going to have to be comfortable walking away from. And so being true to yourself and that moral compass is, I would say, something that is a lifelong skill to know to where to be uncomfortable and stretch yourself, but also walk away from things that you can be happy with, even uncomfortable, but happy with how you handled yourself in that situation.
I would say don't be afraid to go towards the smoke. So what I mean with that is some of the best things that you will learn is from some of the most difficult business situations that you'll have to figure out. So don't always take the easy job. Don't always take the opportunity that it's going to be just a well-established process. Try to dig in, especially early on in your career, to some of these riskier endeavors that you may fail at, but the lessons that you will learn in those failures, you will take with you for the rest of your career. And they will help you make sure that when you are running a team or running a business, that you will have learned what can cause that to fail. You will learn what causes you to come out of it. And so take on some risk, especially early on in your career, because this is the time where chances are you'll be partnered up with somebody who's leading that team who will help you figure things out, and you'll learn from them to say, okay, I saw that that worked, but if I were to do this in their shoes, next time when I'm leading the team, it's going to be this way. And you're going to learn so many additional lessons by kind of going towards that smoke and taking a little bit of risk.
Thank you. Tamar, Brian, Hannah, Julia, Julie, Liz, thank you so much. Everybody? So at this time, I really encourage you to come up here. If you guys maybe want to come off there and just interface, that's good. The one thing I'll say is please be mindful of Julie's hand. She just had surgery, and I'm fearful for you. So no handshaking of Julie, okay? Come on down.